Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. So today I'm going to talk to you about a Titanic again, and it's about the passenger stories that continue to haunt us. So here we go. So the sinking of the Titanic happened on April 15th, 1912, and it was a defining event for the first half of the 20th century. And the nearly of 1,500 souls that were lost continues to fascinate the world. So in writing her book, Titanic, Voices from the Disaster, author Deborah Hopkinson explored some of the stories of the original people whose lives were changed that fatal night. Here are some stories from the three passengers who traveled in first, second, and third class. So guys, are you ready? Get yourself a coffee or a cup of tea, whatever you want, some snacks, and here we go. So first class was a passenger named Jack, and his last name is Thayer. I am only spelling it out because I cannot pronounce it. So, about Jack, he was 17 years old and he was from the high school senior from an upper class family returning from a trip to Paris with his parents. Following the conclusion with the iceberg, he became separated from his parents. He was a young man that he met on board. So he met a young man on board, and his name was Milton Long. Stayed together as the ship Bow sank lower. Just before the Titanic sank, they decided to jump from the rail. Milton went first, and then Jack, he never saw him again. From the icy water, Jack looked up to see the Titanic's second funnel topple into the sea close by, creating suction that pulled Jack underwater. When he surfaced, he found himself close enough to climb up on top of the collapsible B, a lifeboat that had ended up in the water upside down. From his precarious perch, Jack witnessed the last moments of the Titanic as the stern rose, then sank under the dark, cold water. At first it was quiet, then the cries began. Jack said that as soon as one became one long, continuous wailing chant from the 1,500 in the water all around us. The terrible cries, they faded away, and the other boats did not return. So it was, as Jack later said, the most heart-rending part of the whole tragedy. Of the 2,208 people on board the Titanic, 712 survived. Jack was reunited with his mother on board the rescue ship, the Carpathia. Early the next day morning, it was that he found out that his father didn't survive. Jack went on to a successful career. He married and had 2 sons. But it's hard not to wonder if the horror of that night ever left him. In 1945, at the age of 51, Jack committed suicide after his son Edward was killed in World War II. Second class passengers, the Cloyer family. Harvey and Charlotte and their 8-year-old daughter, Marjorie, had left home in England. They were heading to a new life on the Iowa farm to improve Charlotte's health. When the Titanic stopped briefly in Queenstown to pick up more passengers and drop off any mail that passengers had written, Harvey sent a cheery postcard to his folks saying in part, "My dear Mum and Dad, it don't seem possible that we are out on the Bren writing to you, but well dear, so far we have a delightful trip. We're having a delightful trip. The weather is beautiful and the ship magnificent. We will post again at New York. Lots of love and don't worry about us. When the ship struck the iceberg at 11:40 p.m. on Sunday night, the 14th of April, Harvey left the captain to investigate. Upon his return, he told a sleepy Charlotte, "What do you think? We have struck an iceberg, a big one, but there is no danger. An officer just told me so." But of course there was danger. Later, Charlotte clung to Harvey's arm, unwilling to get into a lifeboat. All around her, the sailors were shouting, "Women and children first." Suddenly a sailor grabbed Mallory, I can't even pronounce the name, and threw her into the boat, and Charlotte had to be physically torn from her husband. Harvey tried to reassure her. "Go, Lottery, for God's sake, be brave and go, and I'll get a seat in another boat." A week later, safe in New York with her young daughter, Charlotte broke the news to her mother-in-law. "My dear mother, I don't know how to write to you or what to say. I feel like I should go mad sometimes, but dear, as much as my heart aches, it aches for you. Too far, for he is your son and the best ever lived. Oh, mother, how can I live without him? He was so calm. The agony of that night can never be told. I haven't had a thing in the world that was his, only his rings. Everything he had went down." Charlotte later died from tuberculosis 2 years later. Third class passenger named Rodna, Abbott. So, was returning to America with her 2 teenage sons, Rosmore and Eugen, Eugene. The family managed to reach the boat deck by climbing a steel ladder onto the stern and walking onto the slatting deck over ropes left from lifeboats, which had already been launched. Collapsible C, one of the lifeboats with canvas sides, was being loaded, but only with women and children. At 16 and 13, the Abbott boys would be considered too old, and their mother stepped back to stay with her children. As the boat was being lowered, J. Bruce, as Ismay, managing director of the White Sea Line, jumped in. In the final moments, Abbott and her boys jumped from the deck, but she managed to get into the collapsible A, the only woman in that boat. Her beloved sons were lost. It took a long time for Rodna to recover from the effects of injuries and exposure she suffered that night. She never recovered from the loss of her sons and died alone and poor in 1946. Thank you for listening to this, guys, and please comment, like, and share this out. Also subscribe if you haven't already and hit the bell so you know that when I post, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye!